Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, Sarve Santu Niramay, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukh Bhag Bhavet. So today we will continue on Mandukya. Today we will conclude Mandukya. We have already done 4 sessions on it, but I thought we should conclude it properly because this is a very important Upanishads, though short but very, very sharp. Now, just to recall, we started with Mandukya stating that Om is present, Om is future, and Om is past. So everything is Om. And then it said that Om is Brahma. And then the next verse says, Ayam Atma Brahma. Ye Atma hi Brahma hai. So this started with Om and then went back to the Atma, saying that Atma is Brahma. And then it started the 3 different states of Atma. That is the Jagrata Avastha, that is Bahya Pragya, in which you see all the material world outside yourself. So that is the state in which all your 19 organs are operating. Then you have Antarpragya, that is the state of dream or Tejas Avastha in Sanskrit, in which you do not look outside, but you look inside. All your 19 faculties are still working, but the mind gets divided into 2 parts. One part is projecting the world outside, world inside yourself, and another part is the subject which is observing all those events. So this is all happening inside you while your body is resting, your sense organs are resting, but the mind is operating in fragments. One fragment projecting the world outside, and another fragment is subject which is observing. So we saw that how the state of human soul changes. And then we come to the third state, that is Susuptavastha, or the dream, the deep sleep state, in which there is no antapragya, no bahirpragya. It's what we call ghana pragya. It's completely in a state in which you don't know even you are existing. So these are the 3 states of human soul which have been explained in this Upanishad. But then it says that these states happen on the fourth. There is the fourth one on which all that appears and disappears. Now, to understand that, I would like to take one example and then we will briefly repeat the verse number 7 to understand the real nature of human being. Now let's take an example of a potato. You put a potato in hot water, it boils and it becomes very hot. Now we can call it hot potato. It has heat. Heat is a property there right now. But if you keep it outside for a while, the heat will disappear and the potato will come to its normal state. So the heat was a borrowed property. The heat was borrowed from the water. Water was also not having its own heat. It was also borrowed from the Agni or the fire. So there is a borrowed property which comes into different objects. It comes and then it goes. It comes and it disappears. But there is an inherent property which is what you call the part of that very existence. The water has a borrowed property of heat. But what about Agni? Does Agni have a borrowed property of heat? No. The Agni, the very essential of fire is the heat, because there cannot be any fire without heat. So there it is an integral part of the existence of fire itself. It is not a borrowed property. So you cannot define fire without heat. But the potato which was hot, the heat was borrowed. The water which was hot, the heat was borrowed. It came and it disappeared. The purpose of this is that the fourth state of the human soul is the inherent state on which the borrowed property comes and borrowed property disappears. In one state of that human soul, the outside world appears and disappears. That is, we call Vaisnava Avastha. In the second state, which is the Tejas Avastha, in which the dream state come and then disappear. And then the third one is the Susupti Avastha, in which the deep sleep comes and then it disappears. So these are the borrowed properties of the soul. These are not inherent properties of the soul. These properties come and go. They come for a short while, then they disappear again. Now this is where the crux of the whole existence lies. What we call Maya. Maya is primarily the borrowed property which appears in some form and in some name. Name and form you give. For example, I have this palm here. Now I can, what is this? You will call it a fist. So this fist is a borrowed thing, because if I release this completely, there is no fist at all. The fist disappears. So then the form of fist and the name of fist just came for a short while and then disappeared. That is how all this physical existence around us, the names and forms which appear, they come and they go. They are not essentially the qualities of those forms. For example, you take the ocean. Now, ocean is not something which is appearing and disappearing. The ocean appears to us, the name appears, the form appears, but the essence of the ocean is water. If there is no water in that whole huge pit, then there is no ocean. So the ocean comes and go, but the water is the essential element. Similarly, if you look at other objects, for example, you look at space. Now, in that space, you create a house, you give it a name and a shape. A form appears of a house, you also give it a name. So the name and form appear in the space. Once the house is demolished, the space merges into space. Without space, there is no house. So space is the essential requirement for the house, on which house appears and disappears, on which a go down appears and disappears, on which a toilet appears and disappears, on which, a farmhouse appears and disappears, or on which a football field appears and disappears. But without a space, all these things cannot appear and disappear. There is no form and shape without that original substance which provides space for all of that. So this is the crux of this Upanishad, that there is an intrinsic property of certain things on which all these borrowed property appear and disappear. So whatever appears and disappears in the borrowed form is not the essential quality, but it's only an appearance, and that is called Maya. Maya is appearance in the shape of form and name on in a borrowed form. So it comes and goes. Like I, Gauri Shankar Gupta, my body is visible today. After some years, this body will disappear. So this is a borrowed property. This borrowed property appears on something which is not a borrowed, which is an essential quality, which is called consciousness. On that consciousness, this borrowed property appears and then it will disappear. So the essence of this example is that most of the things which appear and disappear in this world, they are not having the intrinsic property of their own. They appear on something else, they disappear. We took different examples. Let me take another example to explain it again. We have gold ornament. Now you have a ring, you have a bracelet. Now, bracelet appears on the gold. It looks like bracelet. You give it a form and a name, it appears. It's called bracelet. You give a form of a ring, you call it a ring. It has a form and a name. It appears like bracelet, thereby like ring. Now, without gold, there can be neither ring nor bracelet. The gold is the essential quality. If you take the gold out of the ring, where is the ring? There is no ring at all. If you take the gold out of the bracelet, where is the bracelet? There is no bracelet. So the essential part is that we have to look at that element, which is an intrinsic quality of what appears in different forms. So that is the essence of this Upanishad, and that is where this verse, which defines the number 4, the verse number 7, it tells us that that essential form of this entire universe is beyond perception, beyond sense perception. It has given different names, that it is नान्तम प्रज्ञम, ये अंत प्रज्ञ भी नहीं है, नान्त बाह्य प्रज्ञम, बाहर भी नहीं देखता, अंदर भी नहीं देखता, दोनों के बीच में भी कुछ नहीं है, इसमें कोई लक्षण नहीं है, इसको देखा नहीं जा सकता, इसको सोचा भी नहीं जा सकता, अचिंत्यम, आप सोच भी नहीं सकते इसके बारे में, अग्राह्यम, इसको आप पकड़ भी नहीं सकते, इसके साथ व्यवहार भी नहीं कर सकते. So that whole paragraph which describes this quality of the 4 is the essential part of that final element which is the cause of all the causes. For example, you take water. We gave example water. From water, the ocean is the form. Water is the essential element. But water is also not an essential element in itself. Water comes from the fire. Fire is also not an essential element in itself. Fire comes from the air. Air is also not the essential element. Air comes from the space. Space is also not the essential element. It comes from, what you call Mahat Tattva. So if you go backwards, it's like a backward integration into the original form. Then you will discover there is only one particular element which is indestructible, which cannot be described, but that is the element on which everything comes and goes. And that element is consciousness, pure consciousness. This is how it has come into being, and that pure consciousness has been demonstrated first in the form of Om, a woman. Now, this has also been proved scientifically recently in the last few decades, because the science has gone in a different direction. Uh, the spirituality talks about consciousness, but science talks about matter. So they divided the matter. They discovered atom. Atom was at one stage indestructible part, that the smallest particle of a matter. But then the atom was also divided into proton, neutron, and electron into three parts. And now they have also divided proton into some quarks and certain other things. And they have now come to a conclusion that if you keep dividing the matter, it turns into waves. It is no longer a substance called matter. It turns into waves. Waves are like sound waves. And different combination of those waves result into construction of different matters. So this is the scientific discovery in the recent years. And this discovery clearly shows that even the matter finally disintegrates into waves, or you can call it sound. And that is what Upanishad said, that Om, that sound of Om, is the present, past, and the future. This is the Brahma. And I am Atma Brahma, then it explains the entire process. So this is what I think we should understand, that things appear and disappear because they are in borrowed form. They don't have those intrinsic properties of their own. There's only one final intrinsic property, which is, we can call it, consciousness, or you can even call it Om, from where everything comes and in which everything disappears, dissolves ultimately. So this is the crux of this Upanishad. Now I would like to narrate one incident which has been quoted in the life of King Janak. You know, Janak was one of the great spiritual masters. He was a great scholar, and in his court there were many spiritual people who came and went. So there's a story in his life which I would like to narrate, because that explains this Mandukya Upanishad very well. Now, Janak was a very important ruler. You know, Sita was his daughter, as you know. So the Janak had a large empire, and he was, highly influential, prosperous person, and also a great ruler, a very good ruler. So one day he was sleeping, he slept, and he was having a dream. In the dream, a lot of things happened. In the final phases, his neighbor king, his king in the neighborhood, he brought his army and attacked the kingdom of Janak. The chief of the army of Janak came to Janak and asked him, what should we do? So the Janak got up and he said, okay, let us get ready for the war. We can't tolerate this kind of attack on our kingdom. So he put together his army chief was there, he himself was there, and a war continued for days together. Finally, at the end of the war, the Janak lost the war, and the neighboring king who took over Janak's kingdom, he banished Janak. He says, you leave this territory and disappear. Otherwise, I'll kill you. So the Janak banished, he went, walked and walked. And in that process, he was very, very hungry. He couldn't get enough food on the way, and he was really starving. He kept walking and walking, and finally found a place where some food was being distributed to the poor people. So he went there and he stood in the queue to get the food. By the time his number came to receive the food, and very little food was left. So these people gave him a ball and little bit of food in that ball. And as soon as he came out, a crow came from somewhere, and the crow attacked the ball, and the ball fell down. So whatever food Janak got, even that was destroyed. And Janak started crying, and immediately he got up. His dream ended, and he got up. Now he was bewildering. Since he was a spiritual guy, he was bewildering. He says that was right or this is right. When he got up, he is in his kingdom. He is surrounded by all his, facilities, all his servants, his army chief. Everybody is there, and he is living lavishly in his palace. While a little while ago, he was starving and he was begging for food, and the ball of the food which he got, even that was destroyed by a crow. So he was asking himself whether that was right or this is right, whether that was true or this is true. So he started debating in himself, talking to himself, whether that was truth or this is the truth. When the queen got up and the king was debating with himself whether that is true and this is true, the queen got perplexed. What is going on? She couldn't understand what is going on. And the king kept repeating this thing again and again. So the queen said there's something wrong with the king. So she first invited the Vaidya. There used to be a doctor in all the kingdoms. The Vaidya came. He said, "No, there's nothing wrong about this. I think he's lost somewhere and he's trying to get out of some dilemma." So then finally they invited Astavakra. Astavakra was one of the great scholars, and he lived in the kingdom of Janak. So they invited Astavakra in the morning. Astavakra came, and he was still repeating whether that was true or whether this is true. And Astavakra immediately understood what he meant. Astavakra thought that he has seen something in the dream, and he is debating whether that was true or whether this is true. And then Astavakra talked to him. King told him about the entire story. He told him that he lost the war and lost his kingdom, and he was, begging for food. He was starving, and this is what happened a little while ago to me. And now I am sitting with all my kingdom, with all the facilities, with all the amenities which a king has. So whether this is true or whether that is true. So Astavakra asked him one simple question: whether you were there? He said, yes, I was there, because he was the subject of the dream. So he was there, he was experiencing all that. He says, whether you are here? Yes, I am also here. So neither that is true nor this is true, you are true. Everything is appearing on you and disappearing on you. So neither that was true nor this is true. All this is what you call appearance, names and forms. This is just an appearance, a borrowed appearance on your soul. The real truth is you. You, the experiencer, is the really true. So this is how the conversation ended. And that is how the Mandukya explains the life in its different facets, the different phases of human life, the different states of human soul, the appearance of the world in the forms and names, and where they appear. So the root cause of causes, cause of all causes, is actually the consciousness. This is the cause of the causes. You have to go backward, and you will find that the cause of everything, where everything appears and disappears, is consciousness. And that is the truth of life. And this truth has been discovered by Indian sages long time back after going backward into the causes of the appearance of this universe. They went back how the five elements, because you know, we all say that all the things which are visible in this universe, they are a combination of the five great elements, Panch Mahabhut, including our body. A fruit, for example, a tree. A tree gets, the seed is sown in the earth, so there's earth element. Then you put water, so there's a water element. There is air which it breathes, so that is the air element. Then there is sun which causes photosynthesis, that is the sun element, fire element, and the space which is required for the tree to grow. So all the five elements are the cause of the tree. The tree is made of five elements, the leaves are made of five elements, the fruit is made of five elements, the flowers are made of five elements. Similarly, whatever you see in this whole universe is a combination, permutation, combination of five elements, including our body. So these five elements, how they came into being, that was also investigated by Indian sages. There is a very particular sequence of their appearance. They say that from the Mahat Tattva, the space appeared first, the Akash. From Akash came the air. From air came the fire. From fire came the water. And from water came the earth. So the grossest part, which is the earth, is the last one. And the water is more subtle. Fire is more subtle than water. And air is more subtle than fire, and space is far more subtle than any of those things. So this is the sequence in which the universe was created, and then they went back from where the Mahatattva came, and then they went to consciousness and the Om, and that is how the whole science of this universe has been explained by Indian sages in very, very precise terms, and in very, I would say, uh, in a not very long writings. They are not volumes of writings, but in a very, very short, precise words, it has been explained. So the purpose of today's discussion on Mandukya was to explain, and the crux of Mandukya is that we have to ultimately discover the cause of all causes. The consciousness is the cause of all causes, and from where all other things appear, and the borrowed things come into existence. Those borrowed things appear for a while, then they disappear. They are not eternal. Eternal is only consciousness, and that is how we go to the theory of what we call Advait Vedanta. There is only one single appearance which is eternal. All the rest is borrowed appearance, and they come and then they go. They come from the same thing and disappear into the same thing. And that is what the Atma is. I am Atma Brahma, from where everything appears and everything ultimately disappears. So this is the crux of this Upanishad. So I would like to now conclude Mandukya with these words, that we have to understand this fundamental truth of our existence, and that truth is not easy to understand, because as not only Mandukya but other Upanishads have also explained that this is beyond normal comprehension of human being. Like in Kena Upanishad, they say that you cannot see him because it is he who enables you to see. You cannot hear him because it is he who enables you to hear. You cannot even think of him because it is he who enables you to think. So this is the cause of the causes. So you have to go to the real cause, and that cause is consciousness. That cause, we can call it Paramatma, we can call it Atma, some people call it Akash. There are different names given in different Upanishads, but fundamentally it is Om, that is what this Upanishad says. This is the Om from where everything appears and everything dissolves finally. So I think I would like to conclude this here. And if you have questions on Mandukya, I will try my best to answer as much as I can. And before we conclude this, I would also like to mention that next week, next Saturday onwards, we will start Bhagavad Gita. It would be a longish, I would say sessions, in the sense that it may continue at least for a year, because each chapter would require two, three, four talks depending on the chapter. For example, chapter second may require even more. So we will go into Bhagavad Gita carefully. I will request each one of you kindly take your, if possible, take your shower before you join and feel, what you call pavitrata. We should feel some sort of, goodness in ourselves, so that we can start that conversation of Arjun and Krishna in a very fruitful manner, and we join with our good intentions. So on next Saturday onwards, we will start precisely at 10 o'clock. And we will start logging in at quarter to 10, and our talk will start at 10 o'clock sharp. So let us do this exercise, because uh, I believe that Bhagavad Gita is the crux of all the Upanishads, and this is also teaching us how to live a life in a happy and satisfied manner in this world. So that would be a very, very useful exercise, but it will be a little longish exercise. But I think that would be very useful for each one of us. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, please let me know now.